How you been, Ryan?
Good, man.
Having a good day?
I am. It's
Yeah.
Tuesday afternoon.
Are you in Lethbridge or in Calgary right now?
Calgary.
Calgary, yeah. Because you guys are all over.
We are. Yeah.
Have you been enjoying the summer thus far?
You know what? Stampede almost killed me. But after that, yeah, now I had a week of rest and I'm back in the saddle.
Yeah. It definitely takes a toll on you, doesn't it? Especially,
Oh my God. I think we did 18 corporate events in the 12 days.
wow. But you're here today, so that works. You
Here we
made it.
are.
Well, thank you for doing this. I appreciate it.
No worries.
I've been a big fan of yours for years. I still have your old school magazines.
Oh, thank you.
They're actually on my coffee table upstairs. Oh God, when did you start those magazines? It was years ago.
I think it was about 5 or 6 years ago.
And are you still continuing those?
Periodically we
Yeah.
got busy with client work, then we're like, I guess we should go back and do our magazines again. So
And you know what? I bet you during the pandemic, well, no one's touching anything, right? So
yeah, it was definitely a different time.
yeah. Did you guys continue working through it all? Like shifting the messages and branding perspectives for clients, or was it just completely closed down for a while?
No, not at all. So when the pandemic hit, like it was easy for us to transition to a hybrid model because we were a hybrid company before the pandemic.
Yeah.
And so with just different offices across and different staff across Canada, it was like business as normal for us. It wasn't weird at all. We definitely had to adjust a bit more to culture because culture is so big at William Joseph. So we had to figure out how to make culture still happen virtually. But what we found was clients needed us more than ever because they truly just didn't know how to navigate this time, how to communicate. And a lot of our clients honestly weren't even like e-commerce savvy. So then they were like, oh my God, that's the only way we're going to sell is now online. So we need you more than ever.
Nice, nice. For the listeners, how did you get started in this industry? So, are you Calgary born and raised?
No, I'm from Saskatchewan.
Saskatchewan,
So
nice.
I grew up on a small farm outside of a small town in the middle of Saskatchewan, Wadena, Saskatchewan. And my whole goal was I wanted to be a doctor. So I was going to go into medical school. That's what I geared myself for. And even my first year of arts and science was all kind of pre-med. And I did I don't know, like I have always wanted to help people, but I had this creative side and I had this analytical side, but I thought science was my future. And I did an experiment, or sorry, in chemistry class, we had to do this project where it was like what gives fruits their smells and it's esters, and we had to do this trade show booth and all this stuff. And my prof came to me, he's like, Ryan, this is like the best trade show booth I've ever seen in my life. You've sold people on the science behind this, you should go into marketing. I was like, what's marketing? Like, I didn't know what it was. A small kid, or a kid from a small town. So I investigated it and I started to think, well, maybe marketing is for me because it uses both like a creative side and a business analytical side. And yeah, I did a hard pivot in university and said, no, mom and dad, I'm not going to be a doctor. I'm going to be a marketer, which I can still see their that they've always supported me. They've been my biggest fans, and they're like, if that's what you think. But I think they had their ideas like, oh, our son's going to be a doctor. Yeah, so I changed careers and I picked up all my marketing classes and stuff, and
Nice.
the rest is history, man.
Wow. Looking back, do you see moments in your life where you had sparks of creativity and you enjoy those things?
Yeah, it's really funny. It's more even like it's creativity and entrepreneurship. So like when I was a kid, I would like color in my coloring book, and then I would hang the different pieces of art on the walls, and I'd put up like price tags on them at like 3 years old. And my parents had a garden out on the farm, and they would like grow their vegetables and they would give it away to their friends and family. I'd be like, Dad, get the truck. We're selling these at the market.
I love
And
it.
there's probably 10 examples between the ages of 3 and 18 where I truly was an entrepreneur, but there was a creative flair to it. And Yeah, I don't know. Like, I didn't really like my dad and mom were farmers. Like, that's very entrepreneurial. But I didn't grow up in a situation where I had family members running businesses and stuff. I wasn't exposed to that.
Mm.
So I kind of stumbled upon it. And really it was never my intent. I worked for people all throughout my 20s. I'm just getting experience. And I was like, oh, I don't really fit there. And then I would go there and I'd be like, oh, that's just not right. And my friend and I always said like, oh, if I could, I'd own my own marketing agency. And but it just didn't happen. I wanted to work for an agency and I just didn't have experience. I didn't get the chance. And then we just got let go one Thursday afternoon. A company was downsizing and my friend and I got turfed. And they walked us to the street corner. And Tim said to me, you've always wanted to do this. So now is maybe the time. And I was so mad. I was so mad that I got let go because I put my heart and soul into this company. And he said, well, you could spend all of your time crying about what happened, or you could take all that energy and build for the future. And so I would say those words from Tim were just so momentous in my life. And I said, okay, well, if now is the time, let's do it. So that Thursday we were let go. By Monday, we opened up as William Joseph. So that was our middle names, Ryan, William, Timothy, Joseph. But it's also like my dad's name, my grandparents' names, like it lined up 8 ways to heaven. And we rented an office next door to the company that terminated us. A bit of a bold move, and said, "Yeah, we're back." And truthfully, what happened was I had a lot of friends. Like your personal integrity in life is the thing that you can count on. And I had a lot of friends, and everybody always asked me, like, hey, Ryan, can you help me with my business, with my marketing? And I was always like, no, I just sell this or I just do that. So when that happened, it gave me the opportunity to really say, no, now I can sit back and look at your whole business and look at your whole marketing and go, okay, what's the plan? So we were always strategy first at WJ, like the moment we opened our shop, because that's the business mind. And truly my medical thinking, my medical career that never happened, I still use it every day. Clients come in and they're hemorrhaging and we're like, oh my God, triage. And then we're like, okay, we got to stabilize. And then we got to pull in the team of experts. And then we're like,
Yes.
okay, our goal is long-term health for your company and your marketing. So what does that look like? And, I might not be a triage doctor or a surgeon, but I definitely have that viewpoint towards people's businesses and their marketing.
The times have changed. So from when you had started to today, we're in a world where the barriers to entry are, I mean, we see hundreds of marketers and marketing agencies, social media marketers, and now AI. Is it an exciting time? Is it a scary time? I don't think humans are going to be replaced. We will utilize them as prompt engineers or help us in certain elements, such as tools, but you still need a human element. I mean, we can do this podcast as AIs. We need each other.
I can't believe I'm now the guy that says way back when. But like I remember when websites were coming out, and people were worried about that, and computers were coming out and people were worried about that. Technology scares people because they just don't know what they don't know and what the potential of it can be or what it will do. I think at the end of the day, though, with AI, it's another tool to help us be better, you know? And I think you look at it that way. I look at how the brilliance that comes out of WJ, it's not one person, it's a collective team of individuals with a life of experience and knowledge that collectively come together. They analyze, they understand human behavior. Like the thing about business and marketing too is you have to always be aware, like you're dealing with customers that have emotion and perceptions and values and their own internal views, because it's not just like one thing works for everybody. What works for one customer is going to be very different than the other, even though their scenarios could be similar. Their personalities are different, their vibes are different, right? So I think that's something we've gotten really good at WJ, and personalities to help tell their story so that it's authentic in the market.
One of your campaigns really stuck out to me. I think it was a couple of years ago, actually. Yeah, a few years ago. It was the hot pink with Love Local and Red Deer.
Oh yeah, yeah.
My God, I was like, what is this? Who is this? It just garnered attention. How did that come about? And how do brands stand out in today's era of an attention span that's so short? It's scroll, scroll, scroll. And the long form videos work as well as they once did, like a full commercial.
Yeah, well, there's a lot to unpack in what you asked. I think, what I find is brands today have to be authentic. They have to tell compelling stories that are true to their values, and their actions and their words must be in alignment. It's a conversation, it's not a sell. And we've seen brands like Bud Light go under huge controversy. We see CMT under controversy right now. We see a lot of conversations out there because people don't want to be sold. They want to have a connection with you and feel that they fit with your brand, right? And so I think there's this whole spot about like life unscripted. People want to feel like they're a part of the conversation. So I think that the thing is whether we talk about logos and campaigns and packaging and all this stuff, it's all very, very important, but it's how you put it together and how you act and behave as a company. I did a global TV segment once about like the transparent CEO. People want to know, they want to know me. What's this guy about?
Yeah,
If we're
totally.
investing our marketing in this firm, who's the owner? What's that guy's story? I have a role to play in our brand and our story. They want to feel like they fit. So I try to do I'm pretty vocal on social.
I
I
love it.
try to keep out a personality there so that people understand like you'll love me, or hopefully you'll love me. But if you disagree with me, I'm all about that. I'm like, bring it in, because different views are what helps educate and creates great change, right? So
Absolutely. It's the
I,
critical thinking, it's the different viewpoints. When you look at, like, say, Bud Light, for example, what was something that you saw go wrong? And I think they were truly having a hard time to get their audience back or their demographic.
I think Bud Light's going to go down in history as a learning lessons. There's probably a hundred learning lessons you can take. The interesting thing about Bud Light is they've sponsored and they promoted diversity throughout all the years. They did a ton of that. So why now? Why did this one hit such a
Exactly.
nerve?
Yeah.
I think society perhaps is tired of matching brands with causes and having initiatives pushed and this, that, and the other. I think you have a traditional audience that was getting pushed a very liberal type of campaign. There's just so many different variables at play. But I think the thing is as a marketer, I'm just going to take it back to marketing, is you always want to understand the values of your core audiences. And then as you go after new markets, you have to be aware of like, is that going to alienate our traditional or our original clients, or will that complement? There is a strategy behind it.
Because, yeah, from a marketing standpoint, that's the way I look at it. It was like, what were they thinking? And how would you have done that, whether it's Bud Light or anybody out there right now in today's time, if you want to garner a new audience, say it's a younger audience, even a generational audience, how do you do that yet still not alienate? It's an interesting conversation. It's not easy. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know what I think? Like brands definitely jump on the use of influencers right now. Like TikTok is amazing. Like I probably buy more products from watching people on TikTok than I do anywhere else. It's just I see the people that I like and trust using them. I'm like, oh, maybe I need that. And they get into my head. Again, that's not selling. That's people using your products and creating a personality and exposing you to it. And then you want to be like them, right? So there's this whole sense of trust and credibility. But I think influencers are very, very powerful, and we've seen them work really well, and we've seen them maybe not work so well.
I mean, you look back at like the Kardashians or any of those folks and you think, gosh, how many products have been sold? I mean, Kendall, or I think it's Kylie, the youngest one, that's created some beauty line and she's just killing it. I'm thinking,
Yeah, it's definitely it's a marketing angle. Like you even look at like the rollout of Barbie the movie. Look at the brand partnerships that have come out of that, the conversations, the stories. You don't really see the traditional advertising
"Hmm,
per se promoting the movie, but there's so much hype about it, that's been built in a very strategic and modern way. I think that's the biggest thing that I see is every year the world changes. Yes, COVID definitely gave us a bit of a push in a new direction, but the world evolves every year. TikTok evolved the world from marketing perspective. Every year it's evolving. And we as agencies have to stay on top of this because like old ways won't open new doors. And we just see too many clients getting stuck in, like they're just busy. Clients are busy and it's just, this is how we do it. But the world's changed. We're 2 years later, 3 years later. That's not how we do it now. And that's kind of what pains me is when I see people spending good money and their hard time trying to like create results, doing it the old way, you know? And I'm like, oh my God, that's not how you do it anymore. An example that would be just so out there would be like if somebody said, well, Ryan, I'm going to advertise in the yellow pages. I've actually had that happen not that long ago. And I'm like, yeah, you know what? The yellow pages were fantastic. They had a time and a place, but I think there's probably better ways to spend your money today. Not slamming yellow pages, but I think there's better ways to reach your market. And that's just what we see at WJ is it's like our team of experts are always on that like leading edge of what's new. How do we optimize? How do we create connections? And how do we take a company's business from here to here, through strategy, through creative, through content, through digital, through all the different initiatives. And what we'd recommend today is completely different than what we'd have recommended 3 years ago.
Wow.
Wow, hey?
When you look at magazines, for example, or even just our local newspapers, the Herald and the Calgary Sun, I think they're combined now, they've shrunk. Things have changed. How can the existing magazines that are left and relevant continue on? Is there ways for advertisers to be placed in a physical magazine, yet not just have the issue.com PDF version of a magazine? It's got to be interactive. It's got to be engaging with today's era.
Yeah, I think, you know what? Like we did this like a few years ago. It wasn't that long ago. We launched the WJ magazine in the height of no magazines. There's no more print, that's dying. But, my whole thing was, okay, if nobody's doing it and I want to create a credibility piece to hand out, then perhaps there's room for this. But it all comes down to value. If you can create value for the advertiser and value for the reader, people will keep it. You told me
I
those
have
magazines are
yours.
5 years old. They're still sitting on your table. There's value in it then for you. But I think if you try to cut corners, do cheap content, cheap thinking, cheap design, cheap printing, it's in the trash. And so, when we looked at our magazine, we really wanted it to be a combination between Forbes and like GQ. And we set a standard really, really high. And we thought, if we do it of quality and print it of quality, people will keep it because they're going to see it as quality, which worked.
You nailed it. Yeah, exactly. It's a quality. I mean, you hold it and there's a difference. You're like, oh, and the contrast and the imagery, and you're like, that's art.
It's
It's
art. Yeah.
timeless.
No,
So,
that was our goal. So it definitely worked.
so Ryan, I've definitely seen you for years, my friend.
Ah, thanks, man.
Yeah. When you look at social media today and you're a new brand, is it impossible to stand out? Or let's say this, a tourism brand. How can a local village or a town here in Alberta stand out?
Yeah, well, we actually do the marketing for Grand Prairie Tourism.
Nice.
And I always laugh that GP is kind of my second northern home away from home. I ended up being exposed to the community, fell in love with the community, even opened an office in the community.
Nice.
People thought I was going to Toronto and I went up north. But you know what I think it is? Every place has something special, whether it's Calgary, whether it's Toronto, whether it's Grand Prairie or Wadena, Saskatchewan. Everything has there's something special about it. And it's a marketer's job to tell that story to make sure that it's authentic, compelling, and shows what makes it different, And I think it's also really understanding who your target audience is, like your trade area. I remember when I lived in Wadena, Saskatoon was the big city. We were going to go there for medical reasons. We are going to go there for shopping. I don't know if I'd fly from Calgary to Saskatoon now for shopping, but when I lived in Wadena, that was a draw. And so you just have to understand what's a gem to one person might not be to another. And it's all about making the right connections with your audience.
Absolutely. It's the perspectives. And when I look at the Grand Prairie campaign and the stuff that you guys have done there, it's you nailed the coloring as well. The feel.
It feels like GP. Yeah.
Yeah, it's incredible. Like the logo, the branding. How did the hot pink come around for Red?
Well, you know what? I think the thing is that's a high contrast. I think it was highly recognizable in a marketplace where you didn't see a lot of that.
Mm,
I'm sure the creative team had their psychology reasons why they picked it. But I'll second your comment that when I would be in town and I'd look in a window and that hot pink would be just popping out, you could see who is local really what like immediately. So, there was a vibrancy behind it.
yes,
There was definitely a recognizability factor there. It was so successful and it was super modern and clean and easy and Instagrammable. And yeah, the
I love
chamber got
it.
behind it.
Yeah. Have you started looking at the East Coast to
Yeah, like
tackle, or is it
yeah,
only
we,
Western Canada so far?
No, like we have clients right across Canada. So it's just we've had our offices out west. And then after COVID, we really made a conscious decision just not to open up more offices. We just made the idea that, if somebody really wants to work with us, it doesn't matter if you're if you're, a block away or a continent away.
So
Um,
true.
so yeah, we're keeping home base out west, but growing nationally.
Growing nationally. How do you manage to grow an organization and still have your vision go through it all? So you have employees in different areas or contractors. How do you express to them and really get it through so the client gets what they wanted?
We invest a lot in building like out our culture and our values and our beliefs. Like every year or two, we sit down and we go, is this still who we are? We've actually just come through this process again.
Nice.
Because what's interesting is the WJ that Tim and I created 21 years ago. Crazy, hey?
21. Wow.
It'll be 21 this fall. It's still there. I feel like it's the heart, but every time we get new staff, I embrace the new thinking. And I'm like, hey, don't let me turn into an old man and don't let me have an old man company. You guys have to keep me relevant and fresh and contemporary and stuff. So what do you see? What do you think? And every time I get a new team on board or people evolve and change in and change out, the company becomes a little different. So I embrace the evolution. And so I always say, like, here's what was important to me, and here's what is. What's important to me and has never changed is to be that welcoming organization where I'll have the coffee and I'll have you some cupcakes and we're going to sit down and we're going to figure this out. And you don't ever have to worry if you have $2 or $2 million. Like I'll help you out in some way. That's kind of the Saskatchewan way that my grandparents would have said if you showed up at the farm and said, "Come on in, have a coffee," and they would have welcomed you with open arms. Where that's me. You come here, you're like coming into my house. And we've designed our offices to feel like houses, like it literally feels like living rooms and stuff where it just feels comfortable. There is no ego. We don't tolerate ego. Everyone's opinion matters. And we really want to make it feel like a welcoming place for all. So
Mm,
that's a me thing. I think the team then brings in high tech and they bring in, sophistication of modern thinking and new philosophies and stuff like this and global experience and that and the other. So when you take the Ryan side and you take all the bits of the other, we're so much stronger together.
yeah. Who have been some inspirational figures or I guess agencies that you look at? Like, would it be, Leo Burnett or Ogilvy or Sid Lee even?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that like different agencies definitely have played a part in my team's growth patterns. They've worked for Ogilvy, they've worked for
Oh,
different
yeah.
companies nationally and globally, and they've all learned and taken the best from it. For
Mm,
me, I never got to work for another agency. I started this thing when I was a kid. No one would hire me. So I've kind of been limited in that spot. I think my biggest mentors back in the day were like, I would probably go back to like past bosses. I've had an amazing boss, Bill Peterson, that I would go to him and be like, how do I do this? And he'd be like, what do you think? How would you do it? And I was like, can you just tell me? But he would make me try and I'd come up with ideas and he'd go try it. And then I'd come back and he'd go, how did that work? And, I always really respected him for believing in me. And, I look back to my parents, like my mom literally has always said, you can be anything you want to be. Like, you just got to believe it's going to happen, to the point where I actually got believe tattooed on my
oh, I
hand.
love it.
in her
Nicely
handwriting.
done. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I look back through the role models that I've had. Sometimes they're the people that help you not give up on the day to day and keep you going. So, yeah. And honestly, I would say a lot, like even role models are my team. Like I just see what these guys do every day, and I'm like, oh my God, like they're so smart. And I sit there and I go, like, I could learn from that one. I could learn from that one. Like I always joke, like my job is to collect smart people. I definitely am not the smartest person in the room. I know when I should be like, okay, you need to talk with so and so in our agency because that's above my head. And I think clients really appreciate that sense where I, as a CEO, I'm not trying to be the smartest guy in the room.
Mm.
I'm literally saying I have the smartest team, and we're gonna let you work with those folks.
Isn't it interesting when we think of CEO back in the day versus what it is today, where you're so transparent, you're open, you're okay with saying, "Hey, I might not be the best," because you look back then, it's like you had to be the top dog, you had to know everything, even though you didn't, and there's a disconnect from the people, your team. Yeah.
Yeah, you know what I would say as the CEO? Like, I feel confident saying I have the best team, and I feel confident saying I have the best company. And I would say I feel confident that says, we all work so hard and we all, put our skin in the game. But if I have to do the dirty laundry today,
Mhm.
that's cool. I'll go do that. Or I'll get the cupcakes for our party. So I'm kind of like, I think there's a spot though for me, no matter how big we get, I still started this from my basement. And there's something that I loved about working from my basement where I was in the nitty gritty. And, as we've grown, I've learned that I can't necessarily put my fingers in everything like I used to, because that's just going to mess it up. I respect roles and responsibilities and accountabilities. And I'm like, okay, I can't do that. But I'm the first person that if somebody said, I need help, I'll be like, okay, what do I do? What do you need done?
Yeah.
So
Ryan, before we get going, how do you guys know what's a good message in such a divisive time?
it all depends on your target audience. You really have to understand who you're talking to, the value system that they have, so that you can make sure that the message and the media matches the person. Because one message definitely will not work for everybody, and one media platform will definitely not work. And we just have so many options today, and we can't mess it up.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's why strategy is so key. You send out an e-newsletter, you might have 17 different variations of that e-newsletter now, just so that you can specifically talk to the pain points of each audience to get the results that you require. So
Interesting.
there's an art and science to it, definitely.
Yeah. Is that a growing trend still, e-newsletters? Because I don't think they're dying.
No, it's you know what? There's no tactic that is like trendy or not trendy. It's all what's relevant, whether it's an e-newsletter, a magazine, XYZ, digital ads. Like it's just, you just have to understand, here's my business, here's where I want to go, here's the people I need to talk to, what are the best tools for them to use. And I think people have to not fall into the fad trend. Just because it's new doesn't mean it works for you, right? That's the same thing for fashion, hair, everything. Just because it's trendy, it doesn't necessarily mean it's for you. You have to understand what works for your business.
Yeah. And there's something about nostalgia. I absolutely love it.
Yeah.
I
Well,
don't
I've been
know.
there. I'm that old, so
I guess, yeah,
I
you
can
lived
tell you
through
about the
it.
good old days now.
The good old days. You're like, yeah. Oh, the Walkman.
Yeah. Yep. It is hard to believe that we started before websites.
That's incredible. That's super cool. When you look at it all, 10 years from now, 20 years from now, what do you hope for WJ?
You know what? I just want to keep seeing it soar. I love this. Like somebody asked, like, would you retire? Do you want to sell this? No, absolutely not.
Mhm.
Like, I'm not in the day to day, which I love because I'm not really the details person. I'm the bigger picture type of person. But I just see where this team takes us year after year, and I'm so excited to be a part of that team, to be a part of the journey.
There's not many, especially here in Calgary, agencies left. It seems like they come and go, new ones, but longest standing, not many.
I'm vintage.
You're vintage. You're an icon. I love it. Well, I appreciate your time today, Ryan.
Worried,
Thank
man. Thank
you.
you so much.